Hello, this is Dr. Carolina Küpper-Tetzel for the Learning Scientists. Welcome to my office hours. This is the first time I'm doing this and I'm very excited about this. Today I would like to talk a little bit about a teaching approach that's called mark withholding. The idea here is that you provide your students with written feedback on their assignment, on their coursework, and you withhold the mark that you gave to that specific assignment for that student. Why should this be beneficial? So what's the idea behind this? Well, the idea is research has shown, and also personal observations really too, that the moment students see a grade, they tend to focus on that grade and may not process the feedback as well as possible. So they could see the grade and then just ignore the feedback, or just go very briefly over the feedback without really paying attention to specific points. Another idea why mark withholding may be beneficial is that the moment they see a grade, it may interfere with self-assessment. And self-assessment is important. It allows you to understand what you already know, what you're good at, what you need to work more on, how you can improve your abilities. And in the beginning, it's fine if that kind of assessment is more teacher-driven. But with time, you want it to be more student-led and student-driven, so that the student herself knows how well she is doing. And so those are the two reasons that research has shown or suggested to be important why mark withholding may be beneficial. So the first one being they focus too much on the grades and don't process the feedback to the fullest. And the second one is it interferes with the student ability for self-assessment. There have been studies in the past that have shown that students indeed focus on the grades at the expense of processing the feedback. And another one specific study that came out now in 2019 showed that, interesting enough, if the grade is provided within the feedback, students are more likely to open the feedback files and to read the feedback. Whereas if the grade is somewhere outside of the feedback document, they are less likely to open the feedback file. Why is feedback important? We know that feedback is important to actually improve performance in the future. So you want students to look at their feedback, to learn from feedback, and to apply it to the future. Well, the idea here again is that many people start talking about, we want to make, like many people in education, they say statements like, we want to make feedback as effective as possible. Okay, so we want to make sure that the feedback that we spend so much time generating is actually used by the student. Effective feedback comes with those two parts. So the first part is the provision of feedback, and the second part is the feedback uptake and use. We can do a lot of things in regard to feedback provision to make sure that feedback has a high quality, is easy for students to read and to grasp, has concrete steps on what to do next. But if students don't pick up on this feedback, don't take it up, don't use it, don't read it, then we can provide the best feedback in the world. As long as the student is not using it, it's of no use, and we don't have basically closed that feedback loop. One suggestion then is how can we increase feedback uptake by students? And one suggestion that was made was, could it be something quite easy. Something like, could we just withhold the grade and maybe force students to read the feedback, and in that way close the feedback loop. And what I already stated, there is research that has shown a benefit of withholding the grade, and maybe this is something that can help motivate students to actually read and use the feedback. Well, we can have this hypothesis, but it's important in research to actually show that it works. And so what I did last semester, I had an entire cohort of students in their third year of university, and they all have to work on a report. They actually have to work on a report in semester 1 and on a report in semester 2. And in semester 1, we did mark withholding. So what happened was that 3 days before their grades were posted, just written feedback on their assignment was posted, on their report. So 3 days before the grades came out, they received rich written feedback, and there were 3 days that they could process the feedback, read the feedback over, and then on the third day, their marks were released. And what we wanted to see is whether this cohort, where we did this mark withholding intervention, whether they would perform better in semester 2 in their report than last year's cohort that received feedback and grades at the same time. So we compared this year's cohort with last year's cohort and looked whether there would be an increase in performance between semester 1 and semester 2 for the mark withholding group compared to the group who received marks and feedback at the same time. And I wouldn't be doing this subject or this topic today if I didn't have a positive effect, because indeed what we found was that the cohort where we did the mark withholding for that specific report had actually a significant increase in performance for their second semester report. Whereas for the group last year who received feedback and marks at the same time, the line was really flat. There was really no increase in performance between semester 1 and semester 2. We control for prior university academic abilities in our sample to make sure that this is not due to just different abilities of students in those different cohorts. And again, we found that specific result, which is really interesting and informative for future teaching approaches. In addition, because we use data from the virtual learning environment, from the VLE, we were able to look at whether students actually looked at their feedback, so whether they looked and viewed their feedback files. And what we saw here, when we again compared last year's cohort with this year's cohort, we found that students this year assessed their feedback much more than students last year. So it seems to be something really there, that if you withhold feedback just for a couple of days, students are more likely to access their feedback, their written feedback on their assignments. So where does this leave us? Is it enough to just withhold feedback? Is it the new thing that we should all be doing? Probably not. It's just an idea in a specific direction that we could start exploring. So this was the first really more systematic in class intervention that was run, but it allows for additional steps to be taken into consideration. So what you could think about is, and I have a link in the description of a blog post on the Cult of Pedagogy website, is to do an entire, more like a fuller intervention in regards to feedback processing. So the idea here would be to withhold grade in the first instance, just provide students with written feedback, and then to give them a little task, what to do and how to process their feedback. So it could be little exercises. So students could be told, right, you received your written feedback. We would like you to take now up to a week. You have up to a week to look at your feedback, to look, for example, at the marking criteria as well, to reread your assignment, and to maybe come up with a short abstract on observations, like a kind of a statement of how well your assignment meets the marking criteria, and maybe to mark yourself, to give yourself a grade for your assignment. And then a week later, the grades are released, and this provides the student and the teacher for a better ground to discuss grades, marking, evaluation of performance. So that could be just an idea. All right, so I hope this was helpful. Maybe it gives you additional ideas on how to deal with marking, feedback provision, feedback uptake. If you have any comments, let us know or let me know. Thank you very much, and bye.